So now that all our guest speakers are here, we're going to start off with the Fireside Chat panel, and we're just going to kick it off with just double check. Everyone's here, right?
I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
I'm here.
I need one more voice.
I'm here.
Okay. So there should be 5 of you. So I guess to kick off with the Fireside Chat panel, please introduce yourself, your interview process, and your side projects, I guess. So anyone who would like to go first, yeah, just go for it.
I can go.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anjali Viramgama. I go to University of Maryland. I'm a computer science major. I'm currently a senior. As far as companies or interviews go, I have worked at Facebook and Fannie Mae, and I'm joining Microsoft full-time when I graduate. And I've also worked part-time for AWS. And you said projects. Okay. I worked on some research projects at the University of Maryland, which are virtual try-on systems, and another one's in cybersecurity. It's detecting malicious activity through DNS backscattering. And another major project that I've worked on is on Instagram, like between Instagram and Facebook. On the back end, I built the privacy node feature so that, let's say, a Facebook engineer has access to your profile on Facebook doesn't mean they should be able to access your Instagram stuff, even though it's connected on the back end. So that's another major project I worked on.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. And there are a bunch of people who need to get. Wait, Suchi, do you have controls over admitting people into the?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because there's some people popping in. Yeah. So can we go to somebody else talk about, like where they a little bit about themselves, their side projects and interview process.
Yeah, hi. I'm Nick. Previously worked at Coursera as an internship. I'll be returning to them in the summer. The interview process with them was pretty standard, I think. I got a hacker rank, and then from the hacker rank, I had a technical phone screen. And we skipped the on-site because COVID. So the technical interview was absolutely just coding, 100% coding. So after the hacker rank, I just jumped in a call with some software engineers, and they said, solve this problem. They gave me an hour. And then after coding it, I got to ask a few questions about the company. And then that was pretty much it. No behavioral anything. And then from there, I worked the internship. I don't actually really have any side projects, not at least nothing notable that I put on my resume. I mostly just use my previous co-op experience, like on my resume. What was the last part of the question?
I have a quick question. So how did you prepare for this interview?
Oh, okay. So to prepare, I did a lot of things. Leak coding was number one. Like I just grinded leak code, did as many as I could. But I also checked online to see if I could find the question, or find some kind of questions the company would use. And then I also used a website called Pramp, which lets you like do technical interviews with other people who also want to do practice technical interviews. So it's like you interview them, they interview you, and it's free. It was pretty good just to get me to practice talking as I was coding. And I also read a little bit of cracking the coding interview, but I don't think that was really necessary. But yeah, that's basically what I did.
Okay, cool. And I guess we'll go to Noah.
Yeah, hey everyone. I previously interned at Amazon and Tesla, and this summer I'll be joining Shopify here in Toronto. But I guess I'll try and go over quickly about the interview process for those two companies. I will say like I did have a bit of other co-op experience before those companies, so that definitely helped like leverage my way into them. But at Amazon, it's a very standardized process that almost every intern goes through. They're called the OAs, or the online assessments. You can find tons of info about them online, but essentially there are 3 virtual tests that you get in order. So you apply with your resume, and all honesty, it probably gets parsed through some machine. And then if they deem you good enough, they'll send the invitation to an online assessment. So OA1 is like you're given 7 pieces of code with a very small bug in them. You have to fix the bug. Usually it's like a 1-line thing and get the code to run. I think that was in like 30 minutes or something. And then OA2 is like very typical what you experience at other companies, like a HackerRank, where it was 2 programming questions back to back with maybe an hour and a half to do both of them. In my experience, they were on the LeetCode easier side, but I've definitely heard people that got like pretty hard questions. So a lot of these are like just luck of the draw, so you can get super unlucky, like it sucks, but that's like the state of automated stuff. And then OA3 was very simple, like virtual day in the life as an Amazon engineer, where like you make decisions based on their things called the Amazon leadership principles, which are like their 14 rules to live by, which are good to know for the final round interview, which is with a real human, where usually you go over one technical question with an interviewer, but they weigh behavioral questions pretty heavily, and they don't tell you to do this in the interview, but from my research gathering online, they want you to relate your own experiences back to the leadership principles. So it's good to know that as well. And then without going into too much detail, my process with Tesla was actually very quick. I had an HR phone call and then a final round interview with an engineer where we went over like a more object-oriented programming design type question. So I think I got pretty fortunate in that interview, but just echoing what Nick said, to prepare on LeetCode, if you go to the discussion page, there's actually people that talk about like the Amazon interview process a lot. So you can get a good idea of like what's been being asked at Amazon, like what type of questions are expected. But I also used Pramp and LeetCode pretty religiously, and I would watch YouTube videos of solutions if I didn't get them. There's one channel specifically called Kevin Nodden Jr. that does like Java solutions of LeetCode questions, and he was like super helpful. But yeah, I think that's everything I did. And if I want to add one last quick point, I think in LeetCode, it's good to do questions based on type. So, you know, if you're uncomfortable with linked list questions, do a bunch of linked list questions until you're comfortable with them, and then don't do any more. Jump onto like a different type of question, because you can kind of maximize your breadth of range of questions doing it that way. But yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Noah. And I'm going to move on to Katherine.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Katherine, and I'm in 3rd year software engineering at McMaster. So this summer, I'll be going to LinkedIn as a software engineer intern. And about the interview process, it started with just applying online through the LinkedIn site. And then I got a HackerRank after that, which was 2 questions, one around the easy LeetCode level and then one medium. And then after that, there comes a recruiter phone screen just to make sure to schedule the next round of interviews. So once you schedule the final interview, it was a 2-part interview. So the first was technical with about 1 medium difficulty question, about 45 minutes long. And then after that is a behavioral interview. And they ask like the typical behavioral questions and like resume questions. And yeah, the behavioral questions are like ones that you would have to like pull from your experiences to answer. And finally, if you pass the interview round, you gotta just wait and cross your fingers and hope that you're matched with a team. So yeah, that's the interview process with LinkedIn. And for my side projects, most of mine are actually from hackathons. So on my resume, most of them are just from all my experiences. They're kind of small, but they're better than nothing. But more recently, I've done a side project. It's kind of like a website where I can sell my baked goods. So that was another thing I had on my resume. And yeah, that's about it. Is there anything else?
No, that's good. And thank you. And lastly, Deandra, just talk about your interview process and some of your side projects.
Hi, my name is Dandra Spike Madden, and I am a second-year computer science student, and I will be joining Microsoft this summer for my first internship. I didn't really have any big side projects on my resume. It was mostly just me trying to figure out how to use JavaScript or really diving into HTML and Python and just turning it into a project. And I did have some projects where I collaborated with friends on my resume. Now, for the interview process, I applied on LinkedIn and I got an email for a phone screening, and the questions were all behavioral, no technical questions. And then a week later, I got email about a final round interview, and there were two. They were a mixture of both technical and behavioral questions. And for the first question, I actually was unable to solve it, but I did speak about how I wanted to go about it, and I really talked through. And the interviewer really liked that and how I was talking about my thinking process. And the second interview, I did get more time for the technical part and I was able to solve it. Is there anything I missed?
No, that's great. So that's something really special and important to add, that sometimes you might not be able to solve all the problems, but if you're able to communicate it in a way and tell an alternative solution, that's good enough. I have a question for all five of you, actually. What is the best approach to solving or practicing problems for interviews? And for example, some people might feel a little bit intimidated about doing leak coding problems. And I know today we gave you guys 3 leak code problems that were recommended by the guest speakers. But on our own time, like, how did you five grind for interview practice? Did you start off with watching YouTube videos and then you started doing leak code problems on your own type thing? Like, how did that come about?
Okay, if I may go first. I think you really just got to jump into it, like, and just keep doing the leak code problems. Even if at first, like, you do a problem, you have no idea how to solve it, and then you go watch a video explaining how to do it. Like, that's cool. And then you go to you jump to the next one, try to solve it yourself. If you can't, you got to go to the next problem. Sorry, someone's talking in my background. Give me 1 second. And then from there, right, you go to the next problem. I gotta move. And then just keep trying until you can solve them. And like, you really just got to keep going, because with problem solving, the more practice you put in, like the better you'll get at it. And like, you just can't be discouraged. Just keep trying. It's a good thing to look up though, is like Leak Code curated list. There's lots of websites like Leak Coded interview curated list. It'll give you like categories of problems that are relevant to job interviews. So it'll be like, oh, one on trees, one on like recursion and things like that, DP problems. And then from there, you can get all the categories and you can get better and better at each category.
I can go next. So basically, I have a habit of like documenting whatever I go through and writing blogs on them because I get the same questions over and over again. Since someone asked about like the Amazon interview, I put a link there about the detailed process of what happened in my Amazon interview and the resources you need and like the questions that get repeated, especially in OA2. So similarly for my plan, this is another blog I wrote that I'm just gonna send in the chat. What I think you need to do is master only 2 things, data structures and algorithms, when you're looking for internships. And if you're looking for a full-time job, you also need system design. So the way I approach this is, like I mentioned in the blog, I did a 1-year plan. And personally, I did it in 12 weeks. This blog is 12-month long for people who don't have any experience about or understanding of any data structures or algorithms. But you can do this in 12 weeks. Basically, the plan is there are only so many data structures, right? So divide each of them into 1 week each and grind it. Like the first week for me was arrays and strings. So I would pull out lead code, have array and string easy level questions and solve them till I was comfortable, and then switch to medium and then hard. So in like that one whole week, the only questions I would solve would be arrays and strings. So you can imagine like I would be pretty good at it by the end of the week. And when I say like every day, I meant like almost 5-6 hours a day. Like I was full on grinding on it. And then the next week would be about trees, the week after that about graphs. And then after like 8 weeks, I would do like a mix of them, like maybe have a random question pulled up or maybe solve some questions from cracking the coding interview. And that's how I kind of trained myself to crack interviews. Because at the end of the day, you have to train your mind to think a certain way when you see questions. And it's not about like, when you get a question in an interview, you shouldn't be wishing that, oh, I hope this is a question that I've seen before or I've solved before. It should be more of a, okay, I know these kind of questions use hash maps, or okay, a tree should be helpful here. So like just training your mind to think that way is super helpful.
Thank you so much. And also, I would like to get the input of Katherine and Deandra on this question as well. What would you recommend, or how would you recommend people prepare for these technical interviews? And how did you do it yourself?
So I actually used binarysearch.com, and it's like LeetCode and HackerRank, but you can do questions with friends. So that kind of motivated me, and we motivated each other to solve problems. And we would meet up once a week, and we would also do it our own and talk about how would we approach the questions and how we would solve them. And we actually turned it into a whiteboard session where we would take a question and really pretend like we're at a technical interview and take turns solving them.
For me, I started off by reading Cracking the Coding Interview and going through the questions inside the book. I would say that it's really good as a starting point, but after that, you really have to go into LeetCode and start grinding out those questions. For me, at least, I found it easier to start with a list, like what Nick said. I started off with like the top 100 liked questions, I think that's the list called. And from there, keep doing questions. And if you know the company that you'll be interviewing for, it's good to do like company tag questions. But I would recommend like to do it, like you have to like LeetCode really consistently. I feel like that's the best way to actually learn all these and to like develop your problem solving skills. But I understand, like if you're like me, you like to be last minute, and I only really started LeetCoding once I had an interview because I had that like stress motivating me. But then you really have to like basically take a week off and just grind it out. So that's what I would say.
And thank you so much. And another question, resume tips. Now, what are some tips you would give anyone on like for their resume? How did your resume stand out? Were there anything that was key or important to include in your resume? And yeah, technologies. I know you guys talked a little bit about your side projects and hackathons, but what other things can make a student's resume stand out for these interviews? And I guess the automated system that checks your resume, because I always apply and I just get an email back saying, sorry, rejected. So what's something to make your resume stand out?
I guess I can go. Okay, so first I see the question that says that for people who don't have previous experiences. That is something I really struggled with because I'm an international student. I came in here as a freshman and I had a blank piece of paper as a resume. And everybody around me, like a lot of students, they had internships or at least like some kind of part-time jobs in their high school, or at least something they have done in their life. And I literally had a blank sheet of paper with nothing to write on it. So to first get started and get out of the loop of, I don't have experience, but I can't get experience without experience, I would say start small and try to get recruited by a startup or by a local company or like your university itself. So how I did it was I went to a company called Division of IT, which is a very small company. They provide Microsoft Word and like different software to University of Maryland students. So I went to them and said, I'm a comp sci major. I know basic computer stuff. Hire me for free. I just want something to write on my resume. And they did. And I had that to write on my resume. Another thing I did was I got good grades, and then I went to the same professors that I had studied under. I would attend class and I would keep asking questions and answering questions. And I went to those professors like after a semester saying, these are my grades, and I understand the material well. Would you make me a teaching assistant for this course? And they did. So that TA experience, the Division of IT experience, and also I went to a bunch of different professors saying, I can be your research assistant. I can do whatever you ask me to, like for free. I just want it. So that's how I got out of that loop and got my first internship, along with, of course, side projects at hackathons. And as far as only your resume goes, I think there's no magical format. Like, just if you look online, there's tons of resume tips that give you like the basic structure. That's the structure you need to follow, like education and then experiences and so on. But what matters is the content. So focus on having good content on your resume. And another thing is technologies and like keywords. So whenever you apply for a job, look at the description, look at the kind of words they're looking for, the keywords in the job description, and ensure you have those words in your resume. Because without those, your resume will get like auto rejected. So that's one thing you need to do, like curate your resume according to a position. Don't use the same resume for every company out there. And another thing you can do is get a referral somehow. If you have a referral, it's just so much easier to get an interview. And you can cold email or cold message people on LinkedIn, like very random people. Like I would cold message like 10 to 20 different people working at Apple saying, could you refer me? Could you refer me? And one of them might just answer you, as long as you're respectful and like just request them to refer you, so maybe they might. So try getting a referral is another advice I have for you.
Yeah, I can go and add like just a little bit more because like I also remember that like no resume experience, you need experience to get experience fiasco. So another thing you could do is like joining clubs and societies. And I don't want to say like join a club to get a job, but if you don't have anything on your resume, it's at least something that you can kind of show and kind of pad. In terms of format, I think most people in software engineering agree that like for interns, it should be one page. So I guess the kind of goal is to try and pad that one page. So again, like the other obvious answer is side projects, which for me, I didn't really do a ton of side projects. The ones I did used to have on my resume were from hackathons, which I think are a great way to kind of force you to have a side project because I was pretty unmotivated and sometimes like I wouldn't finish whatever I started, but at hackathons, it kind of helps you do that. But yeah, another thing is making sure your resume is parsable. I know there's some websites which will like check the information parsed from your resume. So just make sure it's not in like a .docx format and it's in .pdf. But yeah, besides that, like for your first position, it's really just a numbers game. Like you're gonna be, I think I applied to like probably 200 different things in for my first co-op, and I ended up just working with a professor that, to be honest, probably didn't even care much about what was on my resume. He just needed some extra hands. But yeah.
Yeah, building off of what Noah said, it's definitely a numbers game, at least for your first internship. I think I applied to around 400 or so before, getting LinkedIn. And as for the resume, I would just say the biggest thing is the side projects. And like Noah and other people, it was really hard for me to be motivated to come up with like a side project idea. So definitely go to hackathons, and like they're the best place because you can create something in a weekend with like tons of other like passionate people who also want to build a project. So definitely hackathons are a great way to build your resume. And yeah, that's what I would suggest.
And I would definitely like to hear Deandra's and Nick's input on this, like, you know, experience without experience. How do you break out of that bubble?
Well, for
Go
me,
ahead.
I did have a job right before, and then COVID hit. So then I had to quit. So my experience was gone that I was going to get. So I decided to get involved in some clubs. And from there, I was able to gain experience. And a lot of the interview questions are really revolved around a team setting. So I was able to take experiences from clubs and really speak about them during the interview. In terms of my resume, I haven't added any new projects, and most of the projects I did they're really small, and I created them during that time period when they said school was going to shut down and throughout that summer. It's really important to look at the job description and curate your resume, because you don't want to apply to a job where they're asking for Python and you only have Java projects on your resume. And also you can write cover letters and make sure you do change that up to according to the company.
I just wanted to add on to what Deanne just said about cover letters. Usually, if you're applying to like smaller companies, like through your school portal, I think it's really useful to write cover letters. But if you're applying to like larger companies, most of them do not read cover letters. So use your time wisely.
Kind of to counter that, while most of them don't read cover letters, a lot of students don't submit cover letters. So if you do have a cover letter that you have written up, just put it in anyway. You never know if they do read it. But she's right, like most of them won't. But you know, the more you try, the better.
And also, Nick, just wanted your input on how you first started, you know, started from the bottom, now you're at Coursera. So
Well, for me, I actually went through Ryerson's co-op program. So for me, I kind of, I guess I had it a little bit easier than just trying. And, you know, because I did have co-op behind me there. Like I didn't have anything on my resume. I worked at like, you know, I was a janitor one time and I taught karate. That's all that was on my resume pretty much. And I said like I was in CS and like I could code. But besides that, my very first position wasn't fully a programming either. It was half web dev, half IT. So like I was running around plugging stuff in for people. I think actually maybe it's a little less resume relevant for how to get your first position. Is maybe you don't have to tunnel vision into, oh, I want to be a software engineer like right away. I know some people go through the route of they'll do a QA position first. You know, they'll do something as long as it's like it's as relevant as you can get it. And then if it's your first position, you now have something on your resume and then pivot right away, right? You also don't want to, of course, bottleneck yourself into somewhere you don't want to be. Yeah, so I think that's one thing. But because I had Ryerson Co-op behind me, that did really help for getting my first position. So if your school has something like that and you can get in, definitely take advantage of it for your first time, I think. And the other thing I wanted to, I guess, just plus one is making sure your resume is machine readable, like it's parsable. You can even try just like when you go on like, I think it's like Workday, when you apply there and you do like auto fill out based on your resume and it'll show you. And if it totally messes up and doesn't fill in the forms properly, then you need to change your resume, because a lot of companies, you know, they'll just parse your resume, and if it doesn't parse right, well then, you know, you're out of the race, right? So that's pretty much all I can think of.
Thank you so much. And just another question off the top of my head was how was the corporate culture working in your internships? Um, did you feel as though the environment was nice? Even though you start off as an intern, you don't know a lot. How was the training as well? So even though like you know a little bit of Java, a little bit of Python, how did your companies guide you into your internship roles and understanding more and being able to do more development?
I can try going. Um, in terms of, I think the first part was like, what was the culture like at each company? I'm gonna be like pretty brutally honest. Before this, I worked at RBC and I absolutely hated it. That's not to say RBCs are bad co-ops because I had friends that worked in pretty exciting teams, but I was like in a very business oriented, by the books team with like a dress code and like all this other formalities and stuff. And like a lot of things at sometimes those kind of strict business type culture companies are a lot like take a lot longer than other tech companies. For example, I remember I was working on a project that needed Node like on my computer installed, and I had to like submit a ticket, and it took like a week and a half just to like install like this piece of software on my computer. So it's just like one of the a lot of bigger companies will give you like more flexibility with that. Um, but in terms of Amazon and Tesla, I would say the culture is very laid back, kind of, in the fact that like you kind of work when you want to work. It's you get your work done in your own time. But I would say at Amazon, there was definitely like a lot of expectations on the interns, because they have like a project-based internship where they want you to work on something that's a bit separate from the team, which I don't really prefer versus like just working on what the team's working on. But there was a lot of expectations there, and again, I'm going to be pretty brutally honest. A lot of the full-time engineers at Amazon worked a lot of hours. Like there were a lot of people working weekends, late nights, like on call. Um, so that life of like perceived luxury, like a lot of companies can also has like a lot of downsides. But I can't really paint all of Amazon like that because again, different teams. I worked on Alexa, which was a pretty fast-paced team from what I heard. But there was definitely people on other teams where it was a lot slower than that. And it kind of just depends on what you want. Some people like prefer that fast-paced, get your hands dirty as fast as possible kind of thing. Personally, it wasn't for me. And then when I worked at Tesla, it was pretty crazy. They operate like a startup, but like in a good way. There's a lot of cool things going on, and it was very, very informal. So I'd say Tesla was probably my favorite in that regards. But yeah, and then I kind of forgot to touch on the other part, but most companies give you quite a bit of time to learn, and like they'll set you up with a bunch of different tutorials, and usually have like a mentor to kind of like guide you through things as well. But yeah.
For me, my first company was Fannie Mae, which is basically the backbone of the housing industry of the United States. So it was very, everybody else who was working with me was either a finance major or marketing or business. Like I was the only comp sci in there, and it felt a little weird at first, but I had mentors who, like, I didn't have problem with the coding part in that company, but like just understanding what I was supposed to produce was hard because it was like the business and legal side of things. So I had a mentor who explained me those terms, and I'm an extrovert. I just like interacting with people a lot. So I used to have a lot of coffee chats with a lot of different people and just ask them about their experiences and everything. So that helped, obviously. So that was Fannie Mae. After that, for Facebook, they have a 1 week of just course. They assign courses to you based on the internship project that is going to be given to you. And you just have to do all of those courses in the first week. It's like a boot camp thing. So I was assigned a whole bunch of courses that I had to finish. So that was super helpful. But after that, like Facebook, it just like they just leave you. Like you're independent and you're expected to like work like a full timer and not expect not like hop onto someone to completely help you. So Facebook was again super fast paced. And after that was Amazon. Amazon was crazy paced, like way too much work, I feel like out of all the companies I worked at. So that wasn't Amazon was like based on a cybersecurity project, but I was working part-time. Like Amazon wasn't an internship for me. I was a full-time student and I was working part-time. So it was still fine, but it was still like a lot more work than I had expected to get. And I had a mentor at Amazon to help me whenever I was stuck. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, I can speak a bit about my internships. I actually had a mixed bag of like how it's been. So my first position was co-op at the government, and there it was web development and it was IT, and they were very honestly kind of discouraging when I worked there. I was told by my supervisor, you know, you should spend 3 hours face rolling the keyboard before you come ask me for help. You know, which really just seemed like a waste of time, when it's like, if I could just ask you where, you know, where the directory for this is, like in our tech stack, or in our web app, you know, you could just tell me and then I could just like do my job, right? But instead I got to go hunting for 3 hours. It didn't make a lot of sense, but that was just kind of the way they operated. They really wanted you to just kind of, you know, do whatever you could to try and figure things out, even though there was a lot of information that you just learned from being there. So that was something. My next co-op was at a tiny little company called LBCIT. I think you can apply to them through Ryerson Co-op actually to be a junior web developer, and they were actually really good. There's only 5 of us in a room, and I sat right in front of my boss. Like, I was sitting here, he was like right in front of me. So if I had to ask any questions, he'd just walk over and just help me with whatever. So it was really good, actually. I definitely leveled up my skills a lot at that place. And actually Coursera was really nurturing. Their like culture was really good. I really liked it. That's like I think the thing I liked the most about it, more than the tech stack itself, was the work culture. I mean, and the mission too, right? But yeah, I had one mentor, but a lot of people on my team were really open to answering my questions. And if I like applied, or not if I applied, sorry, if I like asked a question in like a general chat, lots of people would come rushing to help. Eventually, right when they're done doing whatever they were doing, I was constantly bugging like backend infra for help with like using AWS. No one ever really like gave me a hard time. Everyone just helped me. It was pretty great. And I was able to learn a lot. They I guess in terms of like how they evaluate you, right? If you're, the more stuff you're able to do on your own is seen as better there. So, but they don't give you a hard time for not knowing things, because they do understand that if you are an intern, you know, you're not going to know everything. It's more along the lines of just like, if I asked a question and somebody answered, was I listening, right? You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be ask someone one thing and then the next day you ask them the exact same things, then they might get annoyed. But beyond that, that was pretty much it. I've only actually had 3 co-op experiences.
And I know, Katherine and Deandra, this is going to be your first time entering. So what attracted you to Microsoft and LinkedIn? What corporate culture, or I don't know, like what attracted you there, and like why did you choose those companies?
I can speak first. So for me, I had to pick between multiple offers. I was picking between SurveyMonkey, Amazon, RBC, and LinkedIn. So for me, since it was my first internship, I thought it'd be best to go for maybe a more well-known company if that was possible. So for me, I was mostly deciding between Amazon and LinkedIn. And from there, one of the big factors that led me to choose LinkedIn was more of the company culture. At Amazon, it's a little bit I've heard of some issues with like work-life balance, and also since it's such a big company, the teams you might get put with, like your internship is kind of based on the team that you'll be put with, and sometimes it can be kind of like a hit or a miss. But with LinkedIn, I've heard lots of good things, and like it's much smaller. Like they hire much less interns as well. And yeah, the team that I got matched with seemed really interesting. So that's why I ultimately went with LinkedIn. So definitely research like company culture, company values, and also I recommend like talking to past interns about their experiences, and that really helped me make a decision.
For me, I just started applying, and Microsoft was the first company who got back to me and the only company, and it just happened to work out. So I accepted.
That's always great too. And I guess let me stop sharing my screen here to check. But is there any other dying questions? Let me see that maybe LUG at Ryerson has to take over, or do you want to open it up for the attendees to start asking their questions? Give me 1 second.
So Vincent will be asking from LUG's side. He's going to type it in the chat.
Oh, type in the chat.
Hi, sorry. I'll just directly ask. So, what are your thoughts on 16-month internships? I'm currently in the co-op program for Ryerson, and I did recently get an offer for a 16-month internship. But do you guys, what are your thoughts on like such a long internship, and like as like a final goal of being like a software engineering, what what do you guys what do you guys think about like, you know, dedicating all your co-op terms on one company?
Okay. I guess I have some thoughts, I guess some opinions too about that. I mean, ultimately, it's a job, right? So, and like it is still difficult to find work. So if it's like really your only option, I'm not going to say don't take it. The thing is, I think you have some things to think about, right? You know, are you willing to lock yourself in there for 16 months? Is it a software engineering position? And like, is it a decent name? Like, I do know somebody who did take 16 months, and then, you know, they've been doing fine. But at the same time, right, like it's an opportunity cost ultimately, right? It's like, yes, you'll have the security for 16 months, but at the same time, there is 12 months, like let's say if you compare it to a 4-month co-op term, there's then another 12 months where you could be working at other places, seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like, and getting more experience, and also having more names on your resume. Because after every single co-op, you essentially like level up what your resume looks like because you have more jobs. My first co-op was an 8-month position. And they actually did offer me to return too. Like they're like, hey, do you want to keep you know, doing co-op here? And I didn't. I was sick of it at that point, right? To be honest, I was sick of it after 4 months, right? But I had to ride out my whole contract. So I think it's like it is safe, but at the same time, it's a risk, right? And what you're risking is that opportunity cost. I think, you know, it can be something that you can do. Like, I'm not going to say don't do it, right? But personally, looking back, like if I had the ability to get a 4-month instead of my 8-month, I would have, right? I would have took a 4-month and then try to get maybe like 4 or 5 co-ops before. Another thing too is you're locked into pay, right? Your pay increases as you do your internships. Like for example, my first co-op, I was getting paid 17 an hour. My last co-op, I was getting paid 40 an hour, right? It's a huge difference. And if you get locked into, I don't know, 20 some odd, like it's still good money. Don't get me wrong, right? But you can increase it a lot. So I think those are things to think about. And if your goal is ultimately to be a software engineer at the end, you have to think about, does this opportunity, will this enable me, right? Will I be able to learn to obtain the skills to be a software engineer? Is this a developer position? But yeah, I mean, we can't just say like, oh, don't do it, right? Because maybe it's all you got, and it is, it's not easy to get a job, right? So those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
No worries.
Yeah, I can give short input too, just because I remember feeling really jealous of some of my classmates in second year who signed 16-month internships. Particularly, I had some friends that went to IBM, and I was like, damn, like that's really huge, right? Like a really big name on your resume, like offering a higher salary than a lot of people. And I think, some people might tell you like, oh, don't really care about the salary, but personally, like I did, because I sadly wasn't privileged enough and I had to pay for school and rent and stuff. So like things like salary definitely were a factor. And I think with multiple internships, you can kind of leverage that, and also trying on different places. Like it was way more fun for me, honestly, to try other things. But there are advantages of, the 16-month, and that one of them is like, you don't have to interview like 5 times. Like that's great. Like I don't enjoy leak coding, and I don't enjoy technical interviews. In fact, I kind of hate them. So that definitely is hard. But if your goal is to be a software engineer upon graduation, and like you can do a 16-month, you can do multiple internships, in the end it probably doesn't matter. But if you kind of want to try working at some bigger name companies and stuff during your during your undergrad, then yeah, it definitely is a factor. I think if you're signing it after your second year, it's kind of a best of both worlds. Like I would do it, because then I know you'd still have one more summer, I think, if I'm remembering the co-op timeline correctly, and you can always use that one summer to do another internship. But personally, I preferred the latter. But
Thanks, Noah.
And also another question in chat, have any of you guys faced imposter syndrome, and how did you cope or deal with that during your internships?
I was a little bit intimidated before starting Facebook, because it was my first big company in the Silicon Valley. And when I met my team, when I met the people there, people are crazy smart. Like, I gotta tell you, at Facebook at least. And I was like, do I deserve to be here? And all of those questions. But at the end of the day, like, if you are somewhere, it's because you do deserve to be there. Like, there's no way you just randomly got lucky and, landed in that position or internship or whatever it is. So you need to keep in mind that while you're nervous, every other intern with you is also probably nervous. And it's completely fine to like ask a lot of questions until you're sure of what you have to do, and just admit it. Like, just tell your I just told my manager that I'm super nervous. I don't know if I'm doing a good job. Like, can you tell me? And he's like, yeah, you're faster than I expected you to be. So like, when you get that positive feedback, it feels good. So just be open about your feelings, and also keep in mind that whatever it is that you have right now, you really deserve it and more.
So I have another question in the chat. What programming languages would you recommend? Python, Java, maybe C++, JavaScript, Ruby? What would you recommend, and why?
Okay, I'm gonna jump on this one. So I think it depends on what you want to do. If you're looking into software engineering, Python and JavaScript absolutely are good. Python, because you can do, I think with Python, since it's not so verbose, you can leak code faster if you do that one. I was leak coding in Java for a while, and writing system.out.println. If I want to see my output, right, that does end up taking time, even though that's kind of like a little nit. But if you're gonna go into the web world, which I ended up going into web, JavaScript, absolutely JavaScript. You want to know JavaScript, being able to do async await, being able to do arrow functions, being able to do all the JavaScript tricks is super, super helpful when you end up actually on a job using JavaScript. Because if you're doing web, you're going to be doing JavaScript. I think if you do data science, it's going to be Python. And I think otherwise, just something that's like modern and used. is probably the best thing to do, just because ultimately it comes down to your fundamentals, and you can pick up tricks, right? But specifically what I know is that if you're going to go into web, JavaScript, absolutely, you need to learn JavaScript.
I can talk as if you're a software engineer, I would say languages don't matter when it comes to cracking an interview, because most companies, they just ask you, what is the language that you're comfortable in? What do you want to code in? And majority of people either have Java or Python on it. But I would say try to learn as many languages as you can, because once you do, you'll realize that they're all pretty much the same, and it'll be super easy for you to switch. For example, I started with C, and then I switched to C++ because I needed object-oriented programming. And then I did a Java course in my university. And then when I did my first internship, it was in Python. So I had to learn that. And doing these 4 languages made me realize how similar they are. And I kind of had a passion of learning new languages. So after that, I made it a goal to do a different project in different languages. So then I learned Ruby, OCaml, JavaScript, like you name, like the weirdest languages out there. I would just try them out. And once you start switching between languages frequently, you'll realize that it's just a few syntax details that you need to look at. So then in the future, no matter what language is thrown at you, you'll be able to like adjust to it. So especially if you're a software engineer and a student, this is your time to like check out and learn as many languages as you can. And from an interview point of view, just focus on one. It could be Java or Python. It's up to you.
And you already touched upon this, but someone in the chat said, how do you have any tips on how to learn languages well? Since there are so many that we need to learn, so how do you learn on the fly?
For me, I think at first I used to do courses on Code Academy or EDX. Like, especially the first few languages are going to be really hard for you to digest. Like Java and C++, I found them so hard. Like it can take you months or even like years to master them. And of course, you cannot master a language, but like to be very comfortable in them. But after that, I think you will find similarities in languages. For example, when I use C#, I was like, oh, this is very much like Java, Python. It's just so much simpler than any other languages I've done. So what I prefer is, instead of doing a course, taking notes, I just select a project, jump on it, and code it in that language. It could be a project I've already written. Like this one time I had a project in Java. I converted into Ruby, just because I wanted to learn Ruby. So I think when you do a project and when you're stuck, you would Google it and then try to fit the syntax in. And that's how you work in the real world. So instead of doing courses over courses and taking notes and trying to remember it, just get used to Googling on the fly and being able to really adjust and really fix things quickly.
Yeah, just one more quick note about the language thing. If your goal is just to pass technical interviews, I would say just focus on one language. I just picked Java because it's what I learned in school and what I was comfortable with, and just keep using that one because you'll get better and better at it as you use it. But if it's for like doing projects and like work on the job, then yeah, that's a different story.
We have a lot of like specific questions, like how do we get started as a junior Salesforce administrator without experience in an organization? What kind of internships languages should one aim for when they're trying to do a systems analysis position? And I mean, for those specific questions, I feel like you should reach out to somebody who has that job on LinkedIn and like try to do like a coffee chat with them, or try to look at their LinkedIn and just stalk them and be like, like you worked here, like why? I feel like those kind of specific questions, you definitely have to do your research into the person. And I think LinkedIn is honestly the best place, even cold emailing the person, or even, like going to your school, looking up your professor where they worked and see if they've had these positions. Those type of specific things, you definitely need to reach out to people for that. Maybe go to a career fair at your school.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, definitely reach out to people. Like most people are really friendly. Most people want to help out. Like actually, earlier this year, I was actually interviewing at Coursera, and I happened to reach out to Nick, so that was pretty funny. Yeah.
Also, somebody has a question about reading large amount of code, I guess understanding your company's tech stack or legacy code. How did you all go about that during your internship experience?
Okay, I actually have a story, pardon me, that's actually pretty similar. So in terms of reading a lot of code, when I worked on my intern project at Coursera, I had to use something that was pretty similar to what the last intern had done. And this is actually kind of common. You have to build off of what the last intern had done, especially if they didn't end up finishing what they did. Or if what you're doing is a continuation that your team's decided, especially sometimes at companies will kind of quarantine you off, like your intern project is like, oh, over here. And that happened my first half of the internship was doing my project. Second half was working with the team after I kind of proved myself. But there was a large chunk of code with no comments, honestly, just spaghetti that I had to kind of take apart the information from, and I had to use pieces of it and I ended up using pieces of it in my project. I think the best way to do it, especially if it's a language you're not familiar with, is you're gonna have to spend time just reading it, but go look up the docs, like have the docs of the language like with you. So if you see they do some method, like some built-in method, you don't know what it does, go read the docs, try to figure out what that does. And if you are constantly reading code then reading the docs, I find, for me at least, that helps because I get a better understanding of just like the inner workings of the language. And then I mean, from there it's just logic, right? So in a lot of languages, it all comes down to logic, except for the language specific things. And I mean, if you have the ability, ask for help. If you know who wrote it, you can ask them. That can be really helpful because I mean, especially if it's not commented. Otherwise, run it. Put some print statements in it if you can. Try to see like what's happening. I mean, you can use a debugger too if you know how to do that with your IDE. Yeah, one way I think if you can is run the code. Try to see like what happens when it works.
If anyone has any dying questions, you can just unmute yourself and like ask the guest speakers personally.
For Rocky's question, I tried in first year and got nothing. So I worked for my parents to own a restaurant after first year. But looking back on it, I don't think I put as much effort into it as I should have. And I definitely knew people that did apply a lot and had success. So
Yeah, I joined college in August and I started applying somewhere in October and in my first year, and I got an internship in March. So I was about to give up in December or January, but I just kept applying, even though like my resume wasn't good enough. I just applied and I heard back from one company. I had one interview and I got it. So I don't know if I got lucky because I was a freshman and my resume was practically trash, but I feel I did apply for 6 months. So just keep trying.
For sure, never too early to apply. I mean, I can relate. I've been in the mindset where it was like, oh, I want to get X and Y things on my resume before I start sending it out. But really, like you shouldn't do that. Just even if your resume is like kind of barren, apply, and then update it as you're updating it and keep applying to things. You want to be constantly applying. Personally, I feel like I actually applied too late. Many times I procrastinated and I started applying like, for the co-op term, like maybe a month late. And then, everybody else I would be seeing would be getting like, they were all getting bank positions. And then it was February rolls around, and end of February, I managed to sneak in to that government job. With the other company, my second club, it was even worse. I didn't started applying to like the end of February the next year because I was thinking, oh, I have something on my resume now, it'll be easier. And I didn't end up getting something till like literally the end of May, which was like not end of May, the end of April. And it was like, 3 days before I actually started working at the company. So I snuck in. Honestly, apply as early as you can. Absolutely.
I have a question. Has anyone here ever gotten an internship through networking events, maybe career fairs, hackathons? Has anyone ever gotten their positions that way?
I've
Yeah.
the only success I tried networking quite a bit, but the only success I ever had was at Ryerson STEM Career Fair. I had an interview with Ceridian. The recruiter there was super nice, and she was like, she gave me her contact info like directly, and I just emailed her. But other than that, like not really. In terms of like referrals or anything, like I definitely played the cold referral game where I tried asking people, but sadly I did not have any luck. So, but it definitely helps a bit if you can get it that way.
I got into Apple, like I didn't end up taking it, but I got into Apple by going to the Grace Hopper conference and networking with a recruiter. I got into Deloitte by just chatting with a random girl who I thought she was a student, and I was just chatting with her, and she turned out to be a manager, and she like on the spot she offered me a position at Deloitte. So that's another one. I also got into Capital One uh, because of my friend's friend. So I'm a huge believer of networking. Like I used to go to like conferences like this or like even meetings, and there used to be guest speakers, and I would just connect with them or follow them, and I would just connect with as many people as I could, so that whenever time came for me to try and get a referral, I had a lot of people that I could message or email.
I feel like for me personally, I've tried that like on a virtual setting. I've tried to go to like the networking event thing. And then after, like I send them a meaningful LinkedIn message like, hey, I know you from this event. During the event, you talked about, for example, you had your hair red. And I was like, well, when I was in high school, like my hair was dyed red as well. And, like I think what you're doing is really cool. And like it's so personalized. It's so like everything. And then it's like straight up like ghost. Like nothing, like no answer back, no reply. So I'm just like, okay, definitely this cold email thing does not work really. But I feel like honestly, you'll get lucky one day somebody will read it, and you don't know. So I also believe in trying to reach out as much as you can, especially if it's a company that resonates a lot with you. So if you are looking for a specific company, you like the culture, you really want to work there, I think networking with as many people to just know the culture as well and what they're doing will really help you. So that's my advice.
Yeah, just like another point on that. Just because admittedly I kind of have like the opposite mindset of that. Like networking really never worked for me or a lot of the people I talk to. I always thought of it as more of like a kind of business job thing. Like it's a lot really prevalent in like that kind of industry as well. While it's definitely possible, at least at big companies like let's say referrals are great because they'll help your resume get seen. But from everyone I've talked to, at least like let's say like a referral at Amazon or Tesla, like you'll just get to the beginning of the interview stage. And it's just like kind of a more guaranteed way to get there. I'm sure there's been cases where people like got a job like from like straight out of a referral, but usually like for someone that was on the inside, like when people ask me to give referrals to Amazon, I usually, I was like, Ryerson student, sure, like I'll give you a referral. I just went on the back end and entered their information, and it just made it more likely that they would get OA1. So you still kind of have to like go through all that prep and everything. And like always, and referrals are great. And like the later you get into your career, the more stronger they are because it's way harder to hire like a 10-year experienced senior engineer than it is to hire an intern. But yeah, just like as a note, like for if your goal is still like these big companies, like you're still gonna have to go through like the whole process, which sucks, but that's the game right now.
And I know the secret behind like how these Waterloo students usually get all these internships. So like I was talking to, I know this guy, he works at Facebook and he also worked at Apple, and he like worked at pretty much all the FANG companies. And he told me that basically once you have a friend that gets in, they refer you. And it's just like kind of like that chain of referrals. So if you know somebody that's working in FANG and you really want to, get an internship there, guaranteeing you referrals will work. And that's how Waterloo students, they keep the chain going. And like you see everyone with FANG, and usually it works by a referral.
Yeah, I will say like from what I heard, I actually disagree with that pretty hard because one of the main strategies that Waterloo has as a school is like they have partnerships with these companies where Facebook has a thing with Waterloo where they're like, we're going to hire X amount of Waterloo students every term, no matter who applies. Like that's just like something the school has built on reputation. So I want to say like that is like a pretty big reason behind like why the school has such a strong co-op program, is because they've had it for so long, and like a lot of these companies are reserving almost slots for Waterloo students, and it sucks, but like at least at Tesla, I know they didn't hire a lot of international students, and like I wasn't international for Tesla. I'm a dual citizen, so I was born in the United States, and most of the Canadians that were there were from Waterloo because they had this thing there where, you know, X amount of Waterloo students would be hired by Tesla, and they would handle the visa situation. Like Waterloo's co-op would handle going through the visa process, which other co-ops, like I know Ryerson at least, like probably doesn't do, which sucks. But like, yeah, you can definitely still try, because I've met Ryerson grads at tons of other awesome companies as well.
But I'd also add, do not get discouraged if you don't have referrals, because when I was starting out, like for Facebook and even Microsoft, I didn't have anyone to refer me. And I know a few friends who also didn't have anyone to refer them and they got in. So one, it's not impossible to get in. It's just harder for sure. But at the same time, getting a referral doesn't guarantee anything. For example, when I was working at Facebook, I had another friend who was working at Google, and he had a great resume and he asked me to refer him, and I did. And he got rejected. Like he didn't even get the first round, like auto rejected. And I was very surprised, but these companies, they're very specific, like they're looking for very specific things for specific roles. And if you don't match, you won't get it. And if you do, you will get it even if you haven't been referred. So as long as you're not auto rejected, and you can ensure that by having those keywords in your resume, like I mentioned, you will have someone looking at your resume. And Microsoft has this policy where every single recruiter looks at the resume in person. Like they look at your resume for sure if you apply. Like that's what my recruiter told me. They don't have an automated system at all that rejects stuff. I don't know how they handle the volume, but if Microsoft does it, I'm pretty sure there are other companies who do it. So I would just say keep applying. And if you don't get a referral, it's fine.
So someone had a great question about, does anyone know future job fairs coming up? I think a great way to sort of like sneak in getting your side project and also like a fair type thing is like going to a hackathon, because like I know at most hackathons they have like sponsors that you can network with. And recently I realized that if you win hackathons, that's really, really special and important, and you get to go to networking opportunities with sponsors or companies there. So in January, I attended She Hacks 5 by Western, and my team won under the TD Bank track. And we were able to we had special access to recruiters from the sponsors that were there. So I know hackathons can be a little bit like very stressful, under pressure a lot, not a lot of time, but just go there and network, go there and talk to the sponsors. They actually have special links that you can click and you can submit your resume, or you can get a coffee chat with somebody. So if that's how the virtual hackathons are going now. So if you do end up going to a hackathon or anything like that, then you have special access to sponsors and career fairs and recruiters. So I definitely say hackathons where you can get your side projects and also your networking done as well.
Another suggestion would be to just go on Facebook and kind of search up maybe like university club run career fairs. I attended one by U of T, a club at U of T, like a few months ago, and I got some interviews from that. So yeah, that's another option. Just like Google career fairs, or the search up career fairs on Facebook from other universities as well.
So I have another question coming in saying, where can you find hackathons? Usually I find my hackathons at mlh.com. If you go into the North America section, they have all the universities hackathons that you can attend that are virtually. You can even attend hackathons that are in America, and I've done that as well. So definitely check that out. Just know that if you do attend company like a hackathon in America, you will be networking with American companies, and as Canadians, it's kind of like we have to go through a different visa process for working there. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so MLH.com. Also, another great source is meetups.com. Meetups, you can meet up with different tech groups and people and network as well. I recently, I think last or 2 summers ago, I did a meetup with Kobo Rakuten. And I was able to just submit my resume and get an interview that way. So definitely meetups.com is a good one, and Eventbrite. Eventbrite, they that one is also similar to meetups. But yeah, for me, whenever like I submit my resume like on LinkedIn or like Indeed or like Magnet or like, you know, like portals, I feel like I get rejected. So I'm starting to notice that when I go to these events or when I hand out my resume like to an actual person, I'm more noticeable, or I get more feedback versus using the automated system. Just know that recruiters will also, just gonna admit this person here, but just know that recruiters will also take paper resumes and ask for your resume personally, especially if you're going out and doing something like side projects or hackathons. They will look at your resume personally through that. So also keep that in mind too. So don't feel discouraged if you just apply online. There's other ways of getting into getting your resume noticed or getting interviews.
I would just like to touch upon the fact that you said you applied through LinkedIn. I actually went to a Django event, and one of the recruiters told me not to apply using the Easy Apply on LinkedIn because sometimes your resume does not actually go through.
Yeah, and I can really believe that as well. Currently, I'm coming in as, I guess, for this summer, a software developer intern at Bell. And I got that through the hackathon. So I think, yeah, definitely hacks are great. But yeah, like the online automated system, I got so many rejections with my resume, and I knew it probably wasn't my resume, it probably was, but you need different opinions and different takes sometimes. So.
If I may, so I don't know about the hackathons or anything like that. Sounds really cool. Actually, I didn't know about that. That's like an insider scoop. That's really cool. But in terms of I guess LinkedIn, because personally I've had a lot of success with LinkedIn, so I don't want it to be totally just don't like ignore LinkedIn completely, because it does allow you to like the job search itself is really good. Easy Apply, yeah, I agree. I've never had success there. I've absolutely never had success with Easy Apply on LinkedIn, but applying online, I mean, I've also like, you know, sometimes you'll get emails like months later that's just like, oh yeah, we reject you. And you don't even remember the company like you applied for. But I think it's still worth spamming as many online applications as you can, especially since we don't have any in-person events probably for the rest of the year if with COVID and everything. So I don't know. I feel like I never heard about that before. The hackathon thing, that's really cool. And I never heard that thing about Easy Apply. I've never had success with Easy Apply either, but I think it's still worth spamming online applications as much as possible, because I think Noah mentioned it earlier, that the numbers game is real.
And as far as hackathons go, like you can literally apply anywhere and also apply for a scholarship there. It's also free traveling. Like I went to California just because I got sponsored for a hackathon. So even if you could just pick any university, like almost every universities have hackathons, and you can just Google it and note their deadlines on your Google Calendar. For example, Stanford has 3 hacks, and UCLA has like LA hacks or something. So I would just apply everywhere, and I would apply for a scholarship. And if I got the scholarship, I'd get like airline tickets and hotel bookings and all of that. And same with conferences, like the Grace Hopper conference I mentioned. There's there's Tapia conference. There's a lot more that there's Afro Hacks. I would just apply to all of them with the scholarships. And if you get a scholarship, you get to get there. And as far as University of Maryland goes, we host the world's largest all-women hackathon. And we have so many applications. I'm one of the board members, and we have so many applications coming in internationally, and we sponsor people to come in. So we also have a lot of students from Canada. So it's just UMD. So there's a ton of universities like University of Maryland. So just apply to all of those places, and you'll be able to go to hackathons, and they have a career fair inside the hackathon almost always, and you get to network.
And also, to add to that, say you didn't win the scholarship to go to these hackathons. Like, I've traveled to 2 hackathons myself. I've traveled to She Hacks Boston, and I've also traveled to Tokyo Junction. And for these 2 hackathons, actually, I went to my school. I told them, I'm a student. I got selected for these 2 hackathons. I don't have money to go. Can you fund me to go? And Ryerson RSS was totally okay with that. They were like, yes, we will provide for you to go to this amazing event and represent our country, represent our school. So, if you don't end up getting the scholarship, there are so many ways to like get in touch with different people at your university that can help sponsor you to go.
Yeah, a lot of hackathons, at least before COVID, like PenApps, which was at University of Pennsylvania in Philly, they send buses to like hot locations. So like for free, if you got into the hackathon, there was just a coach bus sent to U of T, and like all like students around Toronto just went there. Like it wasn't just for U of T or anything. Like I was on it. There's a lot of other Ryerson students, Queen students, whatever, on that as well. So like some of them like have like buses, like especially like one in like I'm sure I thought I remember another one at UMD, because I actually have like a friend that goes to UMD, and I was like thinking about going, and I remember they were sending a bus to Canada. It might have been like a different hackathon just in Maryland, but sorry, what?
Was it camp?
Maybe it was like quite a while ago, but I just remember potentially also doing that. So like if there's like a hackathon like in the States, but like on the East Coast, and COVID's not a thing implying, there's probably a pretty good chance they're going to send a bus to Toronto.
Yeah, even BitCamp is the largest hackathon on the East Coast. So that's also at UMD. So we have 2 hackathons, like one in fall and one in spring, and we have a lot of students from Canada. So you guys should definitely apply.
So someone has a question. Are hackathons beneficial for other engineering students besides software engineering students? Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah, hackathons are virtually for anyone. There are people with business degrees, business backgrounds, people in English, people with just so many different backgrounds. Yes, hackathons are beneficial for everyone, especially if you sort of want to do something in software development or CS. However, if you are doing something more engineer focused, I would say look into your engineering competitions. I know IEEE has a lot of competitions. I know a lot of business people, they go to their own case comps. So if you want to get into like more CS stuff, more design things, more software things, definitely hackathons are good. But if you want to get into more of like the hardware and like building those kind of competitions, I would say IEEE, look into them, because engineers will have their own competitions that they can do, and that will definitely help your resume. But in terms of hacks, yeah, mainly for people who are interested in software development or design or pitching, or even business and tech, I would say.
There are also a lot of
sorry, you can go ahead.
Okay, there's also a lot of hackathons that are kind of like based on certain themes, like maybe health projects, and that attracts a lot of like people in other fields or programs like biology, nursing, and paired with like people in software or people that want to work with like hardware, people come up with really cool projects, and it's great for like both resumes. So it's really for anybody, and it's really based on the project that you create.
Yeah, and I was just about to add like biology or even electronics, even hardware stuff, like they provide any hardware that you might need, almost any hardware that you might need. So I think hackathons is for everybody. And the best part about a hackathon is the networking. It's just knowing the people. So even if you're interested in some other role, if that role is provided by, let's say, a company like Microsoft, and you meet me, and even though I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, I can definitely refer you for whatever role it is. So it's about meeting people.
And definitely your teams, meeting team members and working with people from different schools, different countries. It's just such an awesome and amazing experience. Like, I'm really addicted to hackathons. Like, I think Hack the North was my 10th hack. So I have another question here for people who didn't go through the co-op program. When did you start applying for internships slash co-ops? And yeah, so anyone want to take this? I feel like you can just apply like whenever. Like if you see something you like, just apply. But is
For
there
me,
any timeline or specific dates?
for me, I started applying like around February in second year, which is actually maybe kind of late, but it's definitely easier to find an internship when you're in third year. But I would say definitely keep applying even in second year or even first year, because people do still get internships in first, second year.
Yeah, I didn't do co-op either at Ryerson, and it really depends on like the type of job. Like I'd say most positions you'd find on the co-op portal, like positions at financial companies, banks, government, will be posted like 4 months in advance at the latest. So anywhere within that 3 month mark or 2 month mark even. But like if your goal is, working at Google in California, that might be posted anywhere between 8 and 12 months in advance. Like it gets pretty extreme in terms of how advanced those postings are. I linked a GitHub link that has a repo of a bunch of summer internships. Usually someone will compile like a bunch of internships and post them on Reddit and put like the application link.
Yeah.
And those are pretty useful if you're going for like those lucrative internships based in the United States or whatever. But in terms of from what I've seen, most Canadian ones are just like 4 months. Like I know Shopify has a awesome internship program and they're usually like 4 months in advance. So not too extreme, but yeah, some of them will be really far. So it just depends on like what you want really.
Just to add to that, I also follow like CS career questions and CS advice on like Reddit. So those Reddits, what I like is that like they'll tell you like Facebook applications are out or Amazon applications are out. And usually I don't have experience, but I know sometimes they do it 1 year in advance, depending on what you're doing, what company you're applying to. So definitely following those Reddits. I know Reddit can be a little bit toxic, but following those Reddits will help you be like on point and you'll know when to apply. And also, yeah, if you're in Canada, just applying like, especially if it's your first internship, I would say like start just applying like in November. Keep tweaking up your resume and like keep going to hackathons and stuff, but just keep applying like November till you start getting interviews. And even when you have interviews, still apply for stuff because you just want to have like that safety of like accepting an offer and you might get something. And yeah, like just keep applying and start as early as possible. Some places hire in the summer for the following summer. So keep that in mind as well. I know, like, for example, I applied to L'Oreal in December, and it was for a 14-week internship in the summer. So I applied for them like in December, but like unfortunately, like they auto rejected me because they straight up said we're not hiring Canadians. So keep that in mind too. And I think the fastest auto rejection I ever got was from Disney. I applied and then 5 minutes later, they auto rejected me. So yeah, there's some companies like that. Yeah, literally start applying tonight. If you haven't been applying, apply.
Yeah, there's definitely like some companies that are very selective, and it sucks a lot. And there's companies that are very prestigious too. Like there are very lucrative internships in the trading sector in like Chicago and on Wall Street. You know, you might have heard of them, especially with all like the recent news and stuff. And they hire like quant developers, which are paid tons of money, like a lot of money for these internships. And they're very selective on who they hire. And it's like, there are definitely companies that are like, yeah, we'll only care for Ivy League students. Like, and if you're not there, we will reject you. And it sucks, but thankfully there are a lot of companies that aren't like that. But I've definitely had my fair share of like just auto rejection companies from either was my year I'm in or being Canadian or whatever.
Also, we have another person asking, do you have a portfolio website or did you just submit your resume? For me, I think the portfolio website is a little much because that's a reflection of your LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn, I have all my projects there. I have all the places I worked at and stuff. So I haven't constructed a portfolio website for myself, but has any of the guest speakers, have you guys made portfolio websites? Did they help you? Did they make you stand out? If you didn't, why was the reason you didn't have a portfolio website?
I can start. I did make a portfolio website. I think it's a really good kind of easy-ish starting side project almost, you could say. So yeah, it's a good little project to start off with. And I think it does make you stand out. I had an interview with Red Hat, and they seemed pretty impressed that I had a website. So sometimes it does make a difference, but a lot of the times, I don't know if it really does, but that one time kind of made the difference for me. So that's all.
I had a website, but it wasn't the website that helped me, but it was my blog. So like I said, I like to document the stuff I experience. And there, not just once, but there have been multiple instances when recruiters or employees, they tell me, when I talk to them about my blog, they're like, oh, it's you, I've read that. So that feels really good. And other than that, just the fact that I have a blog shows that it's a hobby, right? And I'm pursuing that hobby in tech when I'm not working. So it shows that I'm genuinely passionate about tech. So if not a blog, then a YouTube channel or anything that shows that you're genuinely passionate about tech or whatever field it is that you're in should help.
I actually don't have a portfolio website and I really want to make one, but I just haven't found the time to actually start thinking about it.
I have one, and I don't think it ever helped. At least they mentioned, but it's pretty fun, and I think you could give like an extra splash of like creativity and something to like maintain. And yeah, it could be a good use of a first project as well.
So someone has a question, what are some other side projects you recommend? So for me, when I do my side projects, I sort of take something that I'm really interested in or passionate about. So I think for figuring out side project ideas, think about what you like, because if you like something, you'll pretty much force yourself to finish it to the end. Also, hackathons and the pressure of having teammates will make you do a project. But any of the guest speakers, how would you recommend going about side projects?
Yeah, can I start? So I mean, I don't really have any serious side projects, but one thing I think that it is, I guess, relevant is try making a web app. Like if you can try doing that, I mean, unless you have absolutely zero interest in full stack development, then of course don't. But you know, making a web app will give you a lot of things that a lot of big companies are looking for. If you did front end, back end, and you made it all work, you understand how to use APIs. It'll get you using a lot of popular and relevant technology, like especially if you use, like, I don't know, a Node backend, React front end. You then slap that on your resume. You know things that a lot of companies are using, right? So that's the only thing I can really recommend.
I think for me, I just did projects just because I wanted to. It was never about doing a project that would help me stand out, except in my freshman year when I really wanted an internship. So if you're looking for your first internship or your first job, your side projects are going to help you a lot. After that, it's just your experiences that are going to help you. And if I name some of the projects I made, it was like really random. For example, I made a Pokemon API that would just show you random Pokemons. It would spawn stuff. I made a VR game, and it was a very random game. Like you could throw balls and burst barrels and stuff. And then I made a Thanos web browser extension. Like if you clicked on it, 50% of your tabs shut down. Like super random stuff. And the only reason I did that was, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to learn different languages. So that was one reason why. And the other was just, sharpening my skills. So after my first internship, those side projects haven't been that helpful. It's always like my research work or my previous internship work that helped.
Yeah, so if all the guest speakers can drop their LinkedIns, I guess, and I know we went 15 minutes over. It's supposed to end at 7:30, but if anyone else has any dying questions, feel free to come on, unmute yourself, and we'll be able to answer that for you. Otherwise, can wrap it up. So one last question, how about GitHub?
A little. Sometimes in an interview, they'll be like, oh, I saw like this project on GitHub. So, I mean, definitely try and make sure the code you commit to GitHub is like kind of maintained and stuff. But I'd say like not a ton, but definitely more than I think you asked about Stack Overflow. I've never really heard about that one helping.
I think your LinkedIn is also important because I have noticed that I get stalked by recruiters or someone from whatever company that I'm going to interview for. So when I say LinkedIn, it doesn't mean having a lot of connections or anything like that. It's just having a nice bio, and your work experience should be all in there.
LinkedIn, like sometimes recruiters find people through LinkedIn. Like I got an interview with Amazon through LinkedIn. Like a recruiter reached out to me. I didn't actually apply to Amazon. So that's another option as well. There's just many ways to the interview process.
Actually so crazy, but I know a few people who don't even have LinkedIns, and they get like really good internships, and I'm always like really curious, like, how did you get to this interview without a LinkedIn? I feel like everything's done through LinkedIn, and now I'm even seeing high school students with LinkedIns, and I think it's something that's being taught in grade 10 civics and careers now. So yeah, LinkedIn is totally shaping the way people find jobs, and they have an open to work section that you can add as a banner, and yeah, recruiters are able to look at your profile, find your profile easily. And yeah, I have gotten some in-mail messages from recruiters, but be careful with LinkedIn too. Be careful with everything, but be careful who you're communicating with on LinkedIn as well. And if that is all, I guess we will end today's today's workshop. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you guys can leave this Zoom meeting learning something new and preparing for your technical interviews and also applying.